violence affects 1 out of every 4 women in their lifetime. 1.3 million women in the United States are victims of physical abuse, whether usually it's not a chosen abuse. Domestic violence has no boundaries, it has no remorse, and it's something that is very personal to me because I have been a victim of domestic violence. It can happen to anyone regardless of age, sex, or economic status, and it comes in many different forms, and the main focus on the domestic violence is to gain control over a person, and it's usually in intimate relationships. There's psychological domestic violence, which includes emotional abuse. There's threats, there's harassment, and then there's also physical abuse. I don't want to say I'm not a victim of physical abuse, but there have been certain instances where it could have been physical abuse, but most of mine is psychological and it's emotional. It's taken a toll on me, it's taken a toll on my family. I've had to do certain things to protect myself. I feel that I've had to become vigilant in my safety, which is, ridiculous. If you think about it, like I said earlier, it affects 1 out of every 4 women. There's 3 women of us, there's 3 women in this classroom today, and I'm one of those. I've had to put up security cameras. I've had to get restraining orders. I've had to put an alarm on my home. Most of the threats come through as text messages on my phone, and you're probably thinking, well, why didn't you change your phone number? And I think the same thing too. And my reason for not changing my phone number is because that person will probably end up coming to my home then. And I think I'd rather deal with the phone issues than having them come to my home. A couple other things that have happened are when I registered for DVC, somehow this person hacked into my DVC account and canceled all my classes after registration was already closed. I've had childhood pictures taken, stolen from a storage unit that I had. I've had an external hard drive taken that had tons and tons of pictures on them. It's something very personal to me, and I feel that some people think that this should be private, and I shouldn't probably discuss it, but it turns out that it's not private because detectives have gotten involved, policemen have gotten involved, my family's gotten involved. Unfortunately, no friends, they've also gotten involved. And there's really no protection from it. They say that there's restraining orders, and of course I told you guys I have a restraining order. But in reality, a restraining order only protects you so much. They can't stop the harassing phone calls, they can't stop the drive-bys at the house, they can't stop the phone calls, they can't stop any of that, but how a restraining order does protect you is when that person violates it, if there's enough of them, the police become vigilant and they arrest that person. Well, that person can also end up getting out on bail, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. So you have some peace of mind for the time that they are in jail, but then once it starts again, you're back out, stressed. And it affects us in many different ways. There's trouble with coping, there's trouble with anxiety, stress. If you're stressed, if you don't take care of it, it turns into post-traumatic stress disorder. And you have trouble sleeping, you have nightmares. What have I learned from this? I've learned that I need to protect myself. I need to be more careful of who I allow into my life. And I need to be vigilant in just my surroundings. I have to be aware of what's around me. And I have to rely on the police for protection. And it used to be that domestic violence wasn't as noticed or wasn't as attended to as it is nowadays. Luckily for us as women, and women aren't the only ones of victims of domestic violence. There's also men that are victims, but unfortunately, it's more women. So anyway, I've learned that I